Hi and welcome to WOW Bradford and our contribution to WOW Global 24 Festival. I'm Zaheer. I was the programmer for WOW Bradford in the UK for 2 years, and we were really lucky to have 3 years of WOWs in Bradford. They were mad and filled with energy and excitement and fun and action and everything that you'd expect from a city like Bradford. And it was really beautiful to see WOW come and be able to see our city in all its glory, and for us to get the benefit of Jude also coming to Bradford, which is amazing. We're really happy to be partnering with the WOW Foundation to bring really important and urgent discussion from across the UK. We've got Sonia Sandhu today, who's going to be doing a cooking tutorial on Pink Pakoras. She just thinks it's absolutely vital at a time when we've been at home a lot to take care of ourselves and to join cooking if anybody who's around us or living with us. So you might need a notebook and pen because the recipe's amazing and they really are so pink. After Sonia, we're going to hear from Wangari Jones from the Racial Justice Network. She's an activist. We're going to hear from Dr. Cristine Kahigi, who's a historian and also happens to be Penny's mum, and Desiree Renolds, who's also an activist. And they're going to be talking about intergenerational activism and harnessing resources between the generations. And they're also, I think, going to be talking about the self-care that's necessary while being activists and how that can be harnessed and shared within the generations from daughter to mother and mother to daughter. Oh, I'm really pleased that you're here to join us. Please use the hashtag WOWGlobal24 and I'll see you at the other end. Bye.
Hello and welcome to WOW Global 24, presented by the WOW Foundation. And today we've got two very special guests for us today, talking about activism, intergenerational activism, and what feminisms can look like across the globe. So we've got Wangari Jones and Dr. Cristine Kahigi. Although they are mother and daughter, they promise not to fight. Yes. So we're gonna talk about in what ways the importance of women's movements in Kenya. Over here, obviously in the West, in terms of feminism, it can be very narrow. It can mean very specific things. And I think what I learned from coming to you, Dr. Cristine, is that feminisms and women's movements are very, very hard fought and long won in Kenya. I just wondered if you could just talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, thank you for the invite, and I'm happy to see you again, Desiree. I feel like we are just continuing from where we left. Now, coming to answer your question, it's on the Kenyan women's rights, you know, how it looks like in Kenya.
Yeah.
And I would say it has been a long journey, starting from the days before Wangari Maathai, all the way up to now. Men have been putting a real fight, considering that they are the majority in our legislative council. And although there's a lot of pressure from female politicians and many other female activists, we are getting somewhere, but very slowly. And I think you noted the frustrations even when you are here, where female activists are usually labeled as divorcees or homebreakers, but they are pushing. Now, if you read Wangari Maathai's story, because of the course she took, she was divorced with contorted story of her activities or actions that led to the divorce. But the husband came to confess later that she was too strong for him, otherwise he had nothing wrong. There was nothing wrong. She had done nothing wrong, but she was too strong for the male chauvinists who happen to be the majority in our country.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even today, even from the few gains that we have, most of our politicians, the women leaders, suffer the same fate,
Mm-hmm.
but they are still moving on. Now, some milestones that have been achieved by women in Kenya since ages, I think the first time women in Kenya were allowed to have identification cards was as late as 1979. Before then, they had to be identified with their husbands. They couldn't get passports to go out unless their husbands consented. They wouldn't go visit with their children unless they have a letter from the husband. But all that is behind us now, since 79. A few laws have been passed to protect women, but the challenge is implementing the laws is a problem because in our internal, we haven't changed and adjusted to the fact that we are important as women. Mm-hmm. Therefore, even where we have laws now that protect women against sexual abuse and harassment, mm-hmm. very hard for them to go and register a case because, for one, the police force wonders why you are bringing domestic issues to the police station. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to abuse of young girls and children, the perpetrators are usually the relatives that live with them. Yeah. So when you go to fight for, using that law, the answer is, even from the family itself, you cannot take your own to prison, and therefore the matter ends there. Now, as late as 1975, after the Beijing meeting, the famous one, mm-hmm. women who attended that time were labeled as rebels. And in fact, any woman who has been trying to fight for the rights of the women would be labeled as Beijing products. So you are treated as a Beijing woman. But then I'm also happy to say that this thing is changing. Now we have had a few laws passed. We have the Sexual Act law. The law on Sexual Act. We also have some political gains where affirmative action has been passed. 1/3 of members of parliament have to be women, but I'm also sorry to say it has not been realized. Reason being, the minute a woman stands for elective posts, the battle goes to her person because the standards of morality are different. So male politicians can be as immoral as they can, as many women as they can, but a woman politician is attacked for all these other sexual reasons. She goes with who, she sleeps with who, and therefore is not fit. For that, most of them drop along the way before they even complete the campaigning. And then, even for those who have been lucky to be elected, for example, we have 3 female governors out of 47 counties. We have 3. One of them is already elate. The other one, as we are talking now, if you go to the Kenyan channel, there is a Senate debate that is discussing her impeachment right now, as we are having this interview. So that is the remaining one. The other remaining one, the motion has been tabled. It will take place next week. So it means we are not going to have any women governors because they are going to pass it anyway. Then losing the gains. For example, I don't know whether the world is aware that Kenya passed a retrogressive law allowing polygamy at a time when we are fighting for equality. And even when they were discussing the law, the lady parliamentarians were putting a clause saying, if you must marry another one, at least have the consent of the first wife. Men threw it out twice. And therefore, our MPs were supposed to be educated and learned and modern, passed a law allowing them to marry as many wives as they can, and no woman has a right to ask them why they have. We are still fighting over the position of the woman when in divorce matters, in the division of matrimonial property. Up to now, there is a case that is going on. Therefore, in a nutshell, although we have gained, we have a lot to do. Our politicians are up in arms. Even the little gains we got through the devolution, like having a woman rep in every country, because the women representatives were so few. There is a group that is fighting for abolition of that right now. When they are talking about the change of our constitution, they are saying we should eliminate the position of the woman rep, because we have 47 women representing all the women in Kenya now, each for a county. They want that position removed, because to them we should fight like any other man, although we know we are disadvantaged. Otherwise, economically, there has been attempts, microfinancing organizations for women economic development, but we are having our men complaining they also want a male fund, because we have a woman's fund to try and promote or to empower our men. Now we have the maendeleo ya wanaume, who are also saying they are being discriminated, although they are the ones who control the basket, the country basket. Yeah. They also want a portion from that basket, because a portion has been given to women and girls. When it comes to legal rights, I think I have already mentioned, for example, we have protection of the children, especially the girl child. Now men are up in arms saying that the boy has been again left aside. And they also want recognition of the boys' rights, just because women and other groups have been fighting for women's rights. Sexual harassment is all over. Of course, there are laws, but the implementers are men. So you are not very welcome when you go to complain about sexual harassment, especially if you are a wife and you've been battered. So in a nutshell, we are fighting for it. We are not yet there, but we are getting there slowly, and we need a lot of activism, because the other problem is women themselves do not believe they have equal rights, or they deserve. So even where they've been allowed by law to inherit, they are complaining, wondering, why would they get a shamba, that is a farm, as inheritance, yet they are at their husbands. But even at their husbands, most of the property is in their husband's name. So they do not have right, but they cannot understand. So you also need to do a lot on that is educating our own women to believe from the traditional socialization that they are less and women are, men are up, women are less, and they deserve less. Thank you.
Wow. Dr. Cristine, you've just smashed all my questions and squashed it all into one, as per usual. And I think it's quite important to just mention that there is those corrupt politicians that want lots of wives. There are those here as well. Mm-hmm. If we look at our Prime Minister, we can there's that urge in there as well. Anyway, so I think one of the things that there's so much, you gave me so much there, Cristine. But one of the things I thought was quite interesting, and maybe Penina, you can talk about that, is the idea about land rights and the environment. We in the West, the idea of kind of that some people like Extinction Rebellion, or that the climate crisis or climate crisis activists started up in the West or global North, and that's not the case, is it, Penina?
No, not necessarily. I think Ma'am obviously brought in Wangari Maathai as one of the foundations of pushing and fighting for land and economy, and why we need to care for nature and nature to care back for us. But I think it's also, again, she also mentioned about how far it goes. And I thought maybe it's worth mentioning while we're talking about each other, that the fact that we were in Kenya earlier this year, as a group of us went there do and talk about decolonizing education, and those connections, the detachment and disconnect between land and nature and people from each other, and this push around capitalism that's meant we see like value in money, in finances, in material things, as opposed to community, which is how a majority of us grew. So going back a little bit further, during colonialism and before colonialism, was how people were connected to land and nature, and women looking after, whether it's the children, and respect for women as well. So I'm currently doing my PhD, and I'm talking about the impact of coloniality on Black activism. And one of the things I've really been pushing for is the impact, because we had matriarchal societies, just as a reminder, we had these societies that really had held women in really high regard, not all of them, but majority of them. But what came in and changed some of that dynamic and that status quo was Christianity, first of all, but definitely capitalism and neoliberalism as it's packaged, where women are meant to be at home. So that changed in terms of the respect, and some of it started with the armies and the military that were there doing heinous acts or sexual assaults on women whilst they were farming, whilst they were doing, and it seems like that disease started and has continued to the point that now, like you say, there's a debate on whether we should have women, because women, like people, because people are reminded about their own mothers, and would you want this to happen to you? And then usually when you think of your own is when you think, no, it shouldn't happen. But when it's somebody else's, it feels like it's all right to abuse, to assault, to do all those things. So it's kind of a bit of a reminder that actually this situation hasn't always been what it is right now. Things were very different before. But in terms of the context that Ma'am was talking about, and I'll say Ma'am because I know he said Cristine, but I feel really weird calling my mum Cristine. But the context that we were talking about, how different, I think it was interesting to listen to that and hear how different women's rights are in Kenya, or where they are kind of when you kind of contextualize it to Europe or to the UK, for example. Because I think when women's rights or feminism is fighting for equality or equal pay and equal that, we have to remember these people who are so much further back in terms of abuses, but also have respect for what those women are fighting for. Because I've always said, and I think in context, and I don't know, Ma'am, whether you know this, I've always said my mum is one of the biggest feminists I know. And the reason for that is what the barriers that they've broken, that they were there before her time. And then same to my grandma, the barriers that were there that have been broken. So it might not be that demanding certain things as we would in the West, but when I think whether it's education wasn't given freely to everybody. Women or girls were given to a certain level, and the same thing. So some of it, what we've just been told about, whether it's inheritance, there's also things like when a man dies, his brother can take over the wife, and that's the law, or some of the laws that have been in place. So you're passed on to somebody else. So when we're demanding and asking of, and I think for us, and this is coming through as also the Racial Justice Network, where we try to put race analysis and bring in around colonial legacies, is to, if we really care about understanding the context of women's rights and activisms as well, it's also to look at it from a position of those where they are in terms of equity. So not everybody is able, we're not all on the same level, like feminism or women's rights, it's kind of not like a uniform thing. It's actually, there's some people, when we're fighting for, people are fighting for FGM against, or defending FGM, but in terms of here, I see it in, for example, how recourse to funding. We have domestic violence, and we say if a man puts a hands on you or if abuse is going on, report it. What I feel is a difference between how different communities are treated in the UK is people going through the asylum process, people who haven't got status or legal status, meaning citizenship. So people on visitors visas, people on marriage visas, people, students, they're not allowed to be, they have got what we call no recourse to funding, which means they cannot go into the refuges that the rest of society can go into. So I feel that that fails if, again, feminism and women's rights are fighting and saying we need safety and we need all this. We need to remember those people who don't even fit the bracket. And if we're demanding, we need to be demanding for all, not for some, the privileged few, and ensure that's kind of equality is running through and through.
Yeah, and that kind of ties me in a little bit to what we were going to talk about next, which is intergenerational activism. So really what we understand now in terms of movement building is that movements in isolation don't prosper. They fail. When I met Kathleen Cleaver, which is through an RJN event a couple of years ago now, I asked her what is it that how can we maintain movements? How can we maintain solidarities? And she just said, just have more women. Just have more women in your movements. And I was like, of course. And it was brilliant to hear from her. But in terms of intergenerational activism now, like we're seeing now Black Lives Matter, which seems to be focused on young people, on younger people, seems to be motivated and driven by them. And I think, and it's a brilliant movement empowered by the young. But what do we think about intergenerational activism and what can it look like? Cristine, I'll start with you.
I think I can just compare that one with, again, what happens in our country, coming from where we started. And I think Penny has put it correctly in relation to how it differs, how these women's rights differ from elsewhere. Because again, like she put it, the perspective is very different. For example, the things that we are fighting for here are things that had meaning some generations back, but they are no longer applicable, they are no longer relevant because of the social changes that society has undergone. And we all know that societies are not static, they have to keep on changing. Maybe that would tell us, for example, when it comes to the issue of FGM, we know the reason behind that traditionally is no longer applicable because it was meant to control female sexuality, or finally misinterpreted as sex for men only, for the pleasure of men, but not for women. So it was supposed to control them because our men used to go either to herd the animals or for fights elsewhere, and they would take long to come back. Now we know from modern education the harmful effects of FGM, and that is what we are campaigning for as activists, giving reasons and explaining to them. When it comes to an example of what happened about dressing in our country, there was a time there were chaos over the way our Kenyan women were dressing, men complaining that they are too revealing and what have you. And the attacks were carried out against women who are dressed in trousers, asking them to dress in female clothes. And there was some protest with hashtag my dress, my choice. Now, ironically, traditionally, we never used to wear, we used to wear very true, just loincloths around our groin with our breasts in open. That's traditional. So if those men were genuine, they would simply tell us to go traditional and get off the trousers and wear the loincloths. So you can see the irony behind what we are fighting, and it no longer has any meaning. Then education for all has come. Wife inheritance had its benefits that time. We know in modern times it has no place and it's changing. So that's why I'm saying, if you look at the activism now in our context, it's about other things that are different from your place. And that is why, for example, now coming to intergenerational, from my own example, having my daughters wear trousers in church was quite a task. And it was so hard for their father to accept. Just because she belonged to that generation, was brought up in the other generation. And it was tough now to walk over this period to see them as correct, appearing in church in trousers. And I remember the other daughter even stopped going to church because of it. So still coming back to intergenerational activism. But the good of it is that today we can see why they behaved the way they did. And if I was to use Penny's example, she was a child that questioned everything. African children, we are brought up with we are socialized never to question adults. And here she was asking us why we are late, what we are thinking about them, to a point of writing some notes and sleeping them behind our bedroom doors or under our bedroom doors for us to read them when we come. Little did we know that was activism in her. Then, as if that was not enough, when they were 4 children, 4 of them, she mobilized her siblings one evening and they called us to a meeting, something unheard of again, and said they want to meet us both. And when we came, she was there as a spokesperson telling us they are tired of hearing us squabbling in their presence. And if there are any agreements, we should go and settle them elsewhere, because to them, they love both of us. And nobody wants to know what we think of one another. All they want to know is that we are their father and their mother. And we learned a lesson. But I didn't know it was activism. But then taking it back, I started now reflecting on my own experience earlier, where I was always treated as a libel, because I also used to question, but not in the boldness that Penny was questioning us during our time.
Mm-hmm.
Schools, I think I did most of the punishments because I answered a teacher rudely according to them, but just because I wanted a teacher to explain, and I think she answered the same. Therefore, out of those so many examples that we may give, and it's not just Penny, because I know even in school as a high school teacher, because I taught for 25 years in high school, we discriminated. In fact, we had preference of girls from the rural as students than those from urban areas, because students from urban areas would question, would call us teacher instead of Madam Cristine, would tell me hi instead of good morning, Mr. So-and-so. And therefore, we thought it was rude. We labeled them. I was labeled, she was labeled. But the good thing is, all that, as a result of modern education and a lot of activism, we have come to realize it was activism to keep change, which is now acceptable, and we can see the benefits of it. Therefore, intergenerational activism need be encouraged, where the children have something to say, just as the older generation have something to say, if they give each other an ear. In any case, the newer generation can see from the present perspective, or the older generation can speak of experience. While both of them come and share ideas, they can see how to face the new world. That's
yes. Thank you, Cristine. So we've only got a few minutes left now. Penina, I was thinking that in terms of intergenerational activism, what is your mom? I can see what your mom's taught you. I'm loving the stories, by the way. The spilling of the tea is what we're actually here for. I'm going to remember that, the shoving the notes under the door. I'm going to be using that for quite a long time. But Penina, can you tell us a little bit about what your mom has taught you and what you feel like you've taught your mom?
I think just having a homestead where we could speak up, like you just talked about, you're there to be seen, not to be heard. And I think that, yes, maybe at first I didn't know that I was breaking rules. I just felt the need to kind of challenge and ask what I think is something that's kind of not straightforward. But the fact that there was an environment where I could do that without being punished obviously in school, Mum's giving the example, she got into trouble, I got into trouble a lot. I got suspended, I got punished, just for the same little thing. So I think what I've learned is kind of having that open ear and inquisitive, but staying curious as well, even as an adult, not to think that we know everything. I've learned to kind of keep going as well, so kind of to keep breaking barriers. So when I think back to this earlier this year where we went as a team, Mum was the partner as a academic from Nairobi University, and it's the reason, in fact, it went way back to when she was last visiting in the UK, where she asked, when we had Black Panther, Bob Brown coming over, and she said, you guys need to come over. So she kind of facilitated and opened that door that then majority of us Racial Justice Network have gone there and benefited from that. So I think in terms of learning and not being allowing society to dictate who we are or tell us is something I've definitely learned, and probably I'll keep with. What I've taught her, I think she's mentioned some of them. I'm not sure whether I can add anything, but I'm curious about you, Desiree. I know, because you're sat here staying very neutral, but I know we work together at Racial Justice Network, and I know our histories are very similar in terms of our parents, because when you talk about your mum and the humour with your mum, and then what you've done as well as a person who was in London, moved to Sheffield, I wonder whether you could add something before our time goes out, but also if you want to pass it back to Mum as well. I don't know.
Well, I think you see, you're sneaky. I clocked that. I know what you're doing. I think what I'm going to do, though, I think Dr. Cristine has to have the final say, really. And as you mentioned, from the University of Nairobi, I will say that I've learned a lot from my own mother. I've seen her going up to the policemen's faces, arguing with them as they were roughing up young Black boys in my area. And I grew up in Clapham, which wasn't fancy when I was growing up in it. And my mum never had any respect for that kind of authority. And I think that's what she's passed on to me, and in the same way of keeping going. And my mum was a single mum too, and she took no rubbish from anyone and was protecting us, because back then, as now, the police was terrible. But, now we're all kind of journalists with our own phones. Things is being recorded. Back then they weren't. So I think that's what I've learned from my mum. But I'm going to leave the last word to Dr. Cristine, though, and if you can tell us what you think your daughter has taught you and what you think you've taught her.
I'm hearing also now what she thought of me, because I think we did not have enough time now to reach her, or we did not come to this understanding when we were together. She was in UK when I was here, when I realized what she was saying and maybe what I was telling her. But I've learned a lot from her. Not being cowed down, even if nobody else is doing it. And that is what a true activist is. I've also learned that it is good to advocate from her. Advocacy is important if somebody has to bring change. I've also learned from her that you've got to be either a peacemaker or a rights maker, not just a lover who does nothing. It is important to say, and which leads to that then activism in that connection must promote advocacy from what she showed us, protest if necessary, professional volunteership if necessary. And that is where, on my part, I volunteer through education, book, research, even inviting you, and I was so happy because you gained a lot when the Racial Justice Network came to Kenya. And she has also taught me the importance of supporting in whatever way that we can, in a cause that we believe is worthy. Avail ourselves if that is the only thing that we can do for activities in order to enhance solidarity. She has also taught me the importance of nurturing what there is, what we know, something nice enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you crying, Penina? Have you got some tears?
Yeah, I should do, shouldn't I? But I'll say too, because I think, I know obviously we're talking about Mum, and I think even for Dad to participate and for allow, because I think it would have taken a brave or bold man to kind of see all these kids kicking off, or this girl asking for things when you know that that's not how, because my mum and dad didn't grow up the way we were brought up to speak up. So I think for dads to support and others, I think is really necessary. But I think there's a point around the solidarity, because we were saying how before women are also used as weapons against other women in terms of pulling them down. So for me, if there's a message out there, is around that solidarity and nurturing for sure. But yeah, I should be. And I feel really lucky that we're able to do this for WOW Global together as mum, daughter and friend from 3 different places. It's amazing.
It's lovely. Thank you both very much. I'm going to wrap that up now, although we could keep talking for a very long time. I know us. We could, but thank you very much. So this has been WOW Global 24, presented by the WOW Foundation. This Dr. Cristine Kahigi from the University of Nairobi, Panini Wangari Jones from the Racial Justice Network, and me from my house in Sheffield. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're a writer, did you? And an activist.
Hi everyone, my name is Sonia, speaking to you today from my home kitchen here in Bradford, West Yorkshire, because I'm going to be sharing a cooking demonstration with you. Cooking is my biggest passion, and over the past sort of 5 years now, I've been catering for all kinds of different events, including WOW Bradford, catering for a few weddings, hosting pop-up supper clubs, and I helped set up a cafe in Bradford called Bread and Roses, which is a vegetarian and vegan cafe. So yeah, I'm used to working quite a lot with food, cooking on a large scale for a lot of people. So over the past sort of couple of months now, whilst being in lockdown, I've really appreciated that extra time to cook with ease, cook for myself, and to experiment with new recipes. But the recipe that I'm making today is an old favourite. It's beetroot pakoras, which is an Indian recipe. So I come from a Punjabi Indian background, and I'm really inspired by the food that my mum and my grandma make. My mum might pop in at some point because she's in the background. She's going to help me with my recording, so you'll probably see her. So yeah, pakoras. It's one of those dishes where you need like a big bowl because it's really hands-on. So as ever, make sure that you've got nice clean hands. I've not really done a cooking demonstration before, but I've tried to be prepared as possible, and I'll talk you through each step as clearly as I can. So if you want to grab a pen and paper, you can make notes as we go on. So yeah, start off with the big bowl of onions. So large mixing bowl, and I've got 3 large sliced onions in there. Then I've got a couple of handfuls of fresh coriander, which has been chopped. This is 3 beetroots that have been grated. 2 heaped teaspoons of garam masala. 1 heaped teaspoon of salt. 2 finely sliced red chilies. You can put less or more in, depending on how you like it. 2 heaped teaspoons of cumin seeds. And 2 heaped teaspoons of fenugreek, so that's dried fenugreek or methi. I've also got my bowl of gram flour here. Depending on the consistency, which I'll demonstrate as we go through, it can require more flour. So I'm not sure of the quantity, but I'll show you as much as I can so you know what kind of texture that you're looking for. So yeah, nice clean hands. And then just into your bowl of sliced onions, you need to add your beetroot. Good thing with pakoras is that you can literally use any veg. So if you've got any carrots, spinach, anything in the fridge that needs using up, potatoes work well in there as well. So you just need to mix this up. Just going to add in all my spices. You might think it's quite a lot of garam masala and cumin seeds, but because the batter's quite thick, it can take that more spices. Just going to mix everything up really well. And with your fresh coriander as well. Absolutely love them colours. I hope you can see that clearly on the recording. So you just want to make sure that everything's combined, making sure there's no lumps of anything in there either. And I've got a few bits of onion here that are kind of stuck together, so I'm just going to separate them. Yeah, so everything there is now covered with the spice mix, as you can see. I've set up my laptop on like a stack of cookery books to make like a makeshift laptop stand there. Okay, so now just move these out of the way. I would start off with maybe 4 heaped teaspoons of gram flour, chickpea flour. So this is a gluten-free recipe as well. Just start to mix it all in. Everything's starting to stick together, but I can see that it's not, the flour's not coating everything. So I'm going to add a couple more tablespoons in. I read an article the other night from Ruby Tander, who is my favourite food writer, and she was saying that the best kitchen utensil is your hands, and I absolutely agree. It's quite meditative, just kind of getting your hands right in there and, yeah, feeling connected to the food that you're cooking. Right, I'll just show you what that looks like so far. So again, what you're looking for is everything to be covered with the batter. So it's not quite there yet. I'll keep adding more. Making a mess. I have got a jug of water here as well, because sometimes that is needed, but at the minute, all the liquid from the beetroot is coming out as I'm mixing it in. So it doesn't need any additional water at this point. Yeah, things are starting to come together more, but again, it still needs a bit more flour. So I'm going to go in with another 2 heaped tablespoons. That's 10 tablespoons so far. Right, yeah, that's coming together nicely. These make such a nice snack with like a cup of tea, mid-afternoon snack, breakfast, any point in the day, any time is right for pakoras. Okay. And also I do think that more food should be pink. I do enjoy the flecks of colour. The green coriander against the pink beetroot in this is really stunning. This is now 12 tablespoons. It is a lot of gram flour, but if you don't add enough in, they end up quite oily when you fry them. So you want a nice thick batter to coat them and they stay crispy and don't absorb as much oil. All right, so this is what it looks like. Everything there is coated well. Everything's holding together. So because my beetroot, it was raw beetroot, by the way, it had quite a lot of liquid in it when I was grating it, so I've not had to use any of the water for the batter. So I'm just going to pause the video now and I'll show you step number 2, which is frying. Okay, so we're now on to step 2 of pakora making. This is the mix that I made earlier. See that gorgeous pink and the flecks of coriander. So I've got my mum Surinder in to help me here because I've only got one pair of hands. Hi Surinder. So we're deep frying the pakoras. Just when you're filling up your wok or pan with vegetable oil to deep fry, make sure it's deep enough so that there's enough room for the pakoras. If it's too shallow, then they're going to stick to the bottom and you can't fit as many into the pan. So we've got like a medium-sized wok here, and you wait for the oil to heat up on a medium flame for about 3-4 minutes, and then you take about a tablespoonful of the pakora mixture, drop it into the oil, and it's about 3 minutes on either side, and just keep turning them so they brown evenly, as my mum is demonstrating. I hope you can hear that sizzling sound. Right, so we're going to just fry off this batch of pakoras and then I will show you how we plate them up. Hi, okay, so that's all of the pakoras made. What we've done here is just get a tray, a bit of kitchen roll, and when they're deep fried, just put them onto there and this absorbs any of the excess oil. I'm going to enjoy a couple now with a cup of tea and with tamarind chutney, imli chutney, which is my favourite. And that's my pakora recipe. Hope you enjoy it. If you are into vegan food, vegan cooking, do give me a follow on Instagram where I regularly share recipes, or you can keep up to date with my events, and that's at Sonia Vegan Chef. Thank you so much to WOW Global 24 for having me, and also thank you to my woman of the world, my mum, Surinder, and bye from us.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Hi everyone, my name is Musumba. I'm 16 years old. I'm from a small town called Bradford up north. I'm going to be doing 2 songs with you. I just like to apologise if there's any background noise because like my amp is on, and plus I do have a baby sister, so she might be making a bit of noise outside because I am sat by a window. I just apologise in advance for that. So yeah, you can find me on all social media platforms at Musumba Official. So yeah, it should be decent. First song I'm going to be doing for you is called Pakoras. So yeah. Pourquoi they don't want a toy, they just want beef. Pourquoi, pourquoi, look at all these people suffering. Pourquoi, pourquoi, you just do you and I'll do me. Pourquoi, pourquoi, I don't wanna be a part of your team. Because they claim that they hate me, but really they don't wanna rape me. They don't wanna pre me, they're not fans. Nah, they're just an AC. Bars are original, came from the Congo. In my family, there's no messing up. If you really wanna come and try beef me, you gon' have to go through my G.O.D. Pourquoi, they don't wanna talk, they just want beef. Pourquoi, pourquoi, look at all these people suffering. Pourquoi, pourquoi, it's just you and I'll do me. Pourquoi, pourquoi, I don't wanna be a part of your team. Yeah, it's the Lord I serve, man. I don't spit bars, you know I spit that word. And I made mistakes, so now I'm gonna learn. I was driving in hell, but I made a U-turn. Listen, yeah, I can make any beat. I'm a Christian who raps, man. I'm not an MC. From a different year, from a different scene. New year, sing me. Listen, I can't even change myself. Telling me to quit music, man, doesn't even help. It's annoying cause these people wanna sound the same. Get the Xbox cause they're changing up the game. Oh, let me slow down. Haven't even started but the room's getting cold now. Yeah. Listen, man, I had to put my jacket on cause man can never be. Pourquoi, pourquoi, they don't want it so they just won't be. Pourquoi, pourquoi, look at all these people suffering. Pourquoi, pourquoi, they just do you and I'll do me. Pourquoi, pourquoi, I don't wanna be a part of your team. No, no, I don't wanna be a part of your team. No, I don't wanna be a part of your team. Pourquoi, pourquoi, they don't wanna talk, they just won't be. Sick. Thank you very much. Sorry, my sister's just speaking in the background. So yeah, I'm gonna be doing a song called Scriptures. So yeah, this one was released. I think last week. So yeah. I've been searching 16, think I'm grown, you. Expectations, you know I've been told you. I'm still younger, don't wanna get older. I feel pressure, the weight on my shoulder. I seem to stray where babies have babies. I'm too young for this future escape me. Don't want a path for only God to save me. More than my story, but my age won't. Tell me, where's my story? Going from this place now. Tell me, does my story work out okay somehow? My age never defines me. Searching and looking, yeah, like can you find me? What can I be? What could I be that people respect? Because these people in the world, they don't make sense to me. They try to define who I am, they try to label me. And they don't even understand what I came to do, who I came to prove, and what God's love can do. Listen, I don't wanna be like them. Listen, I will never be like you. So why can't I just be myself? Please don't hate on me, cause I'm different from you. Tell me, where's my story? Going from this place now. Tell me, does my story work out okay somehow? Tell me what's the deal? I wanna make you proud. I'm trying to figure out what is the deal. What is the deal? What is the deal? What is the deal? Tell me, where's my story? Going from this place now. Tell me, does my story work out okay somehow? Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to perform for you guys. You can find me on all social media platforms at Musumba Official. So that's MUSUMBA and official. I hope everyone's staying blessed. I hope everyone's staying safe. And yeah, thank you for having me. Peace.
Hi, thank you so much to everybody for taking part. Sonia, I can't wait to try that Pink Pakora recipe. It's got me feeling really hungry. Thanks as well to Penny, Cristine and Desiree. Your panel was amazing. Hopefully, it's such a time, isn't it, of uncertainty, and there's such a big need for action. So hopefully those conversations that we're hearing will help us to either have those conversations with people in our lives, people that we work with, or create spaces for those conversations to happen. I just want to say a massive thank you to the WOW Foundation for bringing us all together for 24 whole hours. It's been absolutely brilliant. And WOW Foundation's work wouldn't have been possible without their global founding partner, Bloomberg, and the founding partner, MasterCard. Thanks, a massive thank you, huge and biggest thank you to all of you for tuning in, for taking an hour out or 2 or 3 or even 24 to watch all of this today. Really, really grateful for you being here and being a part of it.